Number 20. Darkwood. Darkwood is a top-down survival horror video game developed by Acid Wizard Studio. The full game was released on August 18, 2017. It is set in an isolated forest somewhere in the Soviet bloc where the main characters have been trapped for an unknown amount of time. Darkwood is a game about survival, exploration and fear, set in mysterious woods somewhere in the territory of the Soviet bloc. It is a top-down, free-roam, surreal horror experience with a randomized world, taking cues from classic games, where oftentimes you had to figure things out for yourself. Your senses will be deceived, your sight fooled, your smell tricked by Darkwood's surreal terrors, an explanation to what has happened in this godforsaken place looking for your weakness, your inner demons, only to devour you. Welcome to Darkwood. Number 19. LEGO Marvel's Avengers. LEGO Marvel's Avengers is a LEGO-themed action-adventure video game developed by Traveller's Tales and published by Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, Xbox One, Xbox 360, Macintosh and Microsoft Windows. The game features characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well as characters from comic books. Characters include Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Thor, Ultron, and War Machine, and some lesser-known characters such as Devil Dinosaur and Fin Fang Foom. It includes the characters of the Avengers team along with many others, so mixed up and out of order it's likely to confuse anyone who hasn't watched all of those films fairly recently. It feels a lot more like a series of uncoordinated vignettes than the high-quality, cohesive package we've come to expect from LEGO games. If you like the LEGO game formula, you have a preference for playing solo, and you're a huge fan of Makuthas, the weakest LEGO game I've played thus far. Number 18. Last Day of June is an adventure puzzle video game developed by Ovosinico and published by 505 Games. The game was released for PlayStation 4 and Windows in August 2017. Last Day of June is an adventure puzzle video game centered around a couple called Carl and June, who suffer a tragedy. A car accident takes June's life and leaves Carl in a wheelchair. The player controls Carl, who explores past memories of his life with June and attempts to solve puzzles to change the sequence of events that led up to June's death. Number 17. Dungeon Defenders 2. Dungeon Defenders is a multiplayer video game developed by Trendy Entertainment. The game takes place in a fantasy setting where players control the young apprentices of wizards and warriors and defend against hordes of monsters. Dungeon Defenders was announced on August 25, 2010, and has been released on Xbox Live Arcade, PlayStation Network and PC. I have to give Trendy a ton of credit here. Not a lot of devs would have pulled the design 180 after investing so many man-hours. But from what I've seen, following the hearts is already paying dividends, and I can't wait to play more Dungeon Defenders 2 when it enters its beta phase. Number 16. Dishonored, Death of the Outsider. The player can use various gadgets and gear. One such gadget is the hook mine. Dishonored, Death of the Outsider is an action-adventure stealth video game developed by Arcane Studios and published by Bethesda Softworks. By the very nature of its roots in the amazing Dishonored 2, Dishonored, Death of the Outsider was already well on its way to being a great game, even if the things I did weren't quite as compelling this time around. It was wonderfully satisfying to have more Dishonored to play, even if Death of the Outsider doesn't quite meet the high bar Dishonored 2 set in story and mission design. Even though it's a shorter and slightly shallower game, there are some exciting new abilities and interesting changes to the energy system, and the freedom from consequences of chaos further encourage experimentation and freedom. Number 15. Assassin's Creed Origins. Assassin's Creed Origins is an action-adventure video game developed by Ubisoft Montreal and published by Ubisoft. It was released worldwide for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One on October 27, 2017. The game is set in Egypt near the end of the Ptolemaic period, 4947 BC, and recounts the secret fictional history of real-world events. Origins received positive reviews from critics, who praised the story, characters, voice acting, reworked gameplay systems, immersive world of Egypt and the visuals, while criticizing some of the pacing and technical issues. It's filled with areas of soft sand that are swept by dynamic sandstorms, ranges of treacherous and rocky mountains. They are distinct from every other tomb you'll find in ancient Egypt, and even include some throwbacks to the fan favorite timing-based platforming puzzles introduced way back in Assassin's Creed 2. Number 19. LEGO Marvel's Avengers. LEGO Marvel's Avengers is a LEGO-themed action-adventure video game developed by Traveller's Tales and published by Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3, Xbox One, Xbox 360, Macintosh and Microsoft Windows. The game features characters from the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well as characters from comic books. Characters include Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Thor, Ultron, and War Machine, and some lesser-known characters such as Devil Dinosaur and Fin Fang Foom. It includes the characters of the Avengers team along with many others, so mixed up and out of order it's likely to confuse anyone who hasn't watched all of those films fairly recently. It feels a lot more like a series of uncoordinated vignettes than the high-quality, cohesive package we've come to expect from LEGO games. If you like the LEGO game formula, you have a preference for playing solo, and you're a huge fan of Makugas, the weakest LEGO game I've played thus far. Number 13. Strength of the Sword Ultimate. Strength of the Sword 3A, re-released. Strength of the Sword Ultimate is a third-person, fast-paced, challenge-driven, action-beat 'em up video game set in a fantasy realm. The game has a simple premise, presented in a charming little animated intro scene. A monstrous horde is invading the land, and a golem warrior has been delivered to stem the advancing tide of foul creatures and restore whatever harmony was there before. But these are occasional occurrences that can be overlooked to some extent. The steep learning curve and the boring enemy design are much harder to forgive in the end. There's some interesting gameplay and a rewarding challenge to be found in Strength of the Sword 3, but you're going to need some serious patience to get the most out of this game. Number 12. System Shock 2. System Shock 2 is a 1999 first-person action role-playing survival horror video game for personal computers. Despite System Shock 2's novel setting and its RPG elements, its gameplay doesn't really evolve significantly beyond that offered by recent first-person shooters. You'll spend much of your time strafing at enemies around corners, opening crates, and even hunting for keys. But the realistic environments, intriguing plot, and consistently uneasy atmosphere make System Shock 2 constantly effective. It is a hybrid game that effectively blends elements from a variety of genres into a thoroughly enjoyable and accessible package. Number 11. Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice is a dark fantasy action-adventure game developed. It was released worldwide for Microsoft Windows and PlayStation 4 in August 2017, with an Xbox One version in April 2018. It tells the story of Senua, a young, mentally tormented woman who goes on an orphic quest to retrieve her lover from the underworld. The game is centered on a character who suffers from auditory hallucinations and delusional thoughts. It unfolds like a beautiful, dark, tense visual novel, placing the excellently raw, human performance. Her story is one of confusion, sadness, fear, and loss, and it's punctuated by moments of beauty and strength that has left a lasting impression on me. But as impressive as its story is, Ninja Theory's smart design reinforces the sensory nature of the harrowing tale through subtle and intuitive mechanics. Number 10. Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus is an action-adventure first-person shooter video game developed by Machina Games. It was released on the 27th of October 2017 for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. America, 1961. Your assassination of Nazi General Death's Head was a short-lived victory. Despite the setback, the Nazis maintained the stranglehold on the world. You are B.J. Blazkowicz, aka Terror Billy, member of the Resistance, scourge of the Nazi Empire, and humanity's last hope for liberty. Only you have the guts, guns, gumption to return stateside, kill every Nazi in sight, and spark the Second American Revolution. Everything that made Wolfenstein, The New Order an excellent single-player first-person shooter is dialed up for round 2. With a cast of instantly likable heroes and bone-chilling villains giving emotional context to its bloody uprising against high-tech Nazis, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus has come to play. Number 9. Rise of the Tomb Raider. Rise of the Tomb Raider is an action-adventure video game developed by Crystal Dynamics. It is the sequel to the 2013 video game Tomb Raider. The game's storyline follows Lara Croft as she ventures into Siberia in search of the legendary city of Kittish whilst battling a paramilitary organization called the Trinity that intends on beating her to the city's promise of immortality. Presented from a third-person perspective, the game primarily focuses on survival and combat, while the player may also explore its landscape and various optional tombs. Rise of the Tomb Raider raises the bar set by Lara's last outing with a rollicking adventure story, strong villains, gorgeous vistas, and smart puzzles. Go off the main path to find the best stuff in dastardly optional tombs. Number 8. Doom 3. Doom 3 is a survival horror first-person shooter video game developed by id Software and published by Activision. Doom 3 is set in 2145 on Mars, where a military-industrial conglomerate has set up a scientific research facility to research into fields such as teleportation, biologica, research and advanced weapons design. However, the teleportation experiments inadvertently open a gateway to hell, resulting in a catastrophic invasion by demons. Doom 3 is extremely immersive with about as perfect a presentation as I've ever seen in a game. Visually, it has no peer at the moment. Even Far Cry's impressive vistas and wonderful environments can't stand up to the artistic and technical might of this sensory feast. I was expecting that kind of gameplay, but I would have liked to see AI that was a little more deviously evil than deliciously evil on at least some of the enemies. Number 7. Outlast 2. Outlast 2 is a first-person survival horror video game developed and published by Red Barrels. It is the sequel to the 2013 video game Outlast, and features a journalist named Blake Langerman, along with his wife Lynn, roaming the Arizona desert to explore the murder of a pregnant woman only known as Jane Doe. Blake and Lynn get separated in a helicopter crash, and Blake has to find his wife while traveling through a village inhabited by a sect that believes the end of days are upon them. Outlast 2 is deep South horror, but without the trappings of domesticity we saw in Resident Evil 7. There's more wicked creativity at play here than I've seen in a horror game in a long time. Play it loud, in the dark. Number 6. Beyond Good and Evil 2. Beyond Good and Evil 2 is an upcoming action-adventure video game in development by Ubisoft. Did I mention this all takes place on an alien world with anthropomorphic animals, including Jade's uncle, a pig named Peth? It was an instant cult hit, though commercial disappointment put plans for more games in the series on hold. Beyond Good and Evil 2 might be a bit exaggerated, but it's clearly going for a more realistic look overall. If the initial trailer weren't enough evidence of that, Ansel and his team have released several images of concept art. Players will create a custom character that starts at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder, and must work the way up to being captain of a ship capable of interplanetary travel. Number 5. Amnesia, The Dark Descent. Amnesia, The Dark Descent is a survival horror video game by Frictional Games, released for Microsoft Windows, Mac OS X, Linux and PlayStation 4 platforms. Games like Dead Space and the most recent Resident Evil titles can be scary but tend to be just as focused on action as they are on atmosphere. In Frictional Games' Amnesia, The Dark Descent, you get no gun. When a gruesome shambling creature rounds a corner on wobbly knees and its yawning rictus comes into focus, you can only succumb to its onslaught or flee in terror, hoping the shadows will provide safe haven. It's a fairly short game, but one that's near impossible to forget. Any fan of horror, every Lovecraft fan, and any with even a hint of curiosity should give Amnesia a shot. Number 4. Resident Evil 7, Biohazard. Resident Evil 7, Biohazard is a survival horror game developed and published by Capcom, released in January 2017 for Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. This new first-person take on the formula wisely remembers that it's survival horror adventure, composed of tense exploration and careful item hunting. Resident Evil 7 grounds itself in elements that made the original great while still indulging in a risky new shift in style that both helps and hurts the beloved formula in equal measure. But it's also the closest a numbered sequel has come to recapturing Resident Evil's slow, but thrilling and atmospheric adventure game roots in a while, a welcome return that I truly hope to see more of in the future. Number 3. Alien, Isolation. Alien, Isolation is a survival horror game developed by Creative Assembly and based on the Alien science fiction horror film series. It was published by Sega and released for Windows, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360 and Xbox One in October 2014. Alien, Isolation received generally positive reviews and had sold over 2 million copies by May 2015. Critics praised the game's retro-futuristic art direction, sound design, and the alien's artificial intelligence, but criticized its story, characters, and long runtime. Alien, Isolation seemed like the perfect Alien game on paper, and for the first handful of hours it even seems to deliver on its promise on the strength of its outstanding art and sound that faithfully recreates the ambience of the classic horror film. Someday, someone is going to make an incredible Alien video game that checks every box. But, sadly, Isolation is not it. Number 2. Condemned, Criminal Origins. Condemned, Criminal Origins, known in Europe as Condemned, is a first-person survival horror video game developed by Monolith Productions and published by Sega. Condemned, Criminal Origins places an emphasis on melee combat and puzzle solving, including searching or fingerprints and gathering evidence. This game is dark, it looks great, the sound is insane, it's got an engaging melee combat system, and it's one of the scariest games I've ever played. Even though the game's level progression and puzzles are extremely linear, you'll have a hard time being disappointed by this one. You play as Agent Ethan Thomas, an FBI agent assigned to the Serial Crimes Unit. The game opens as you investigate a grisly murder scene set up by a killer known as the Matchmaker. Soon after you arrive, strange things begin to happen around you, and you'll suddenly find yourself framed for the murder of 2 police officers. If you're looking for a game that you can spend many hours on in single and multiplayer, this isn't for you. But if you're looking for a terrifically why single-player game with brutal action thrown right in your face. Number 1. The Evil Within 2. The Evil Within 2 is a third-person survival horror video game developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda Softworks for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. The game received generally positive reviews. It received praise for its visuals, atmosphere, and gameplay, but received some criticism for its story and characters. The Evil Within 2 is an ambitious, genuinely tense, and at times brutally difficult experience, but one that left me exhilarated. Like the original before it, The Evil Within the second of may not know how to deliver convincing dialogue or maintain a consistent tone, but it does know that the mark of pure survival horror is to leave you feeling like you only just survived time after time after time. The Evil Within 2 gives you more options to play your way in a much bigger survival horror playground than the original.